Well, folks, welcome to this this session today. It's going to great turnout. I hear more people coming on. We I think over 100 signed up for this, and the with some of the people I see there in the conference rooms will probably be well over 100 people that are attending this. So just a few reminders before we get started. We are recording this session, so please be mindful of anything you say or type into your chat window because it'll be captured. It'll be on the portal for years to come. If you have questions today during the presentation, type them into the chat window. You can raise your hand as well. There will be a discussion period where we want that discussion. Raise your hand and really want to hear some people, hear some voices. And then the muted. So if y'all can mute your phone, your microphones now during the presentation so that we won't hear the background. And there will be a survey. Brooke will put that into the chat window. And can somebody mute? I hear some background back there. But Brooke will put that into the chat window. And I just want some feedback. After all this is done, I'll send an email too. So if you don't do it during this session, I'll send you an email. Just please give me some feedback if this session is beneficial to you. And if you want any changes, I look at every single one of these feedback set responses. Okay, so the op exchange. So the op exchange was originally the Lean Alliance. It was founded by the SCMP, the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, over 21 years ago, and it was originally called the Lean Alliance and was rebranded in 2019. To include everything about operations, not just lean manufacturing, but Industry 4.0, leadership, safety, plant layout, anything that has to do with your operation, making you more competitive. I've been fortunate to be a participant of the Op Exchange for about 16 years. Two companies I worked at for 16 years, and it's just a hugely beneficial organization. The entire premises of the Op Exchange is collaboration. It's a fraternal group where we learn from our peers. It originally started at Upstate. You can see in the map here, that's where all our member companies are currently. You can see in the Upstate, Greenville, Spartanburg, 32, 19 now. That's where it originally started, but it's grown. It's grown throughout the entire state. We're now in 36 of 46 counties across South Carolina are represented by Op Exchange members, as well as some from North Carolina and Georgia. We're over 170 members now, and we're growing. So great organization. Really appreciate being part of it myself. So I was introduced to Doug Berger, our presenter today. It was back in January, February timeframe through a mutual contact, Mike Unger, who's on the call with us. And I discovered that Doug is doing some things that are very similar to what we're doing in South Carolina, aligned very much well with what we're doing with Op Exchange. So I attended a presentation from Doug, and I sat in on a round table with him and some other members. And because somebody put themselves on mute, I hear some feedback. But I heard some things, and during that presentation that I wanted to share with you all, right? It inspired me, right, to hear what Doug had to say. And one of the things he calls for that I really resonated with him is unprecedented collaboration. There's a need now for unprecedented collaboration. So Doug founded Industry Reimagined 2030, a nonprofit organization. Doug's a visionary, and he's committed to bringing about a generational sea change in U.S. manufacturing and productivity through transforming the patchwork of efforts by thousands of organizations across the United States into a unified force for a step change in productivity and competitiveness. He's an advisor to Ashoka social entrepreneurs and working in revitalizing distressed communities in Appalachia, as well as water security in Mexico. He speaks with national, corporate, and Vistage audiences, and he's His workshops have empowered thousands of people to develop breakthrough skill sets. Doug loves jazz guitar, sailing and biking. He thrives on new adventures and experiences, and he recently toured Morocco. So with that introduction, I'm going to introduce you to our new friend, Doug Berger. Doug, I'll let you take over now.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be talking to all of you. And I'm going to be introducing some new ideas today. And, when you're introducing new ideas, people always have a reaction. And they're either going to say, oh, I agree, I've been thinking that all along, or they're going to have a reaction and go, no, I disagree. So I want to let you know that I'm going to be deliberately, if you will, poking the bear. All right. And what I would ask that you do is, if you automatically agree, look deeper and find something beyond just a quick agreement. And if you automatically disagree, if you will, kind of put that aside and go, there might be some value here if I just put aside my automatic disagreement. So I'm going to be presenting some new ideas. I'm going to be presenting some practical applications of those ideas. And throughout, there are some times during the formal part of speaking with you that I have some particular stop points to engage with you on. And then so what I'll do is, at those particular points, I'll ask people to raise their hand if they're interested in sharing. And then Brooke will call on 2 or 3 people to share. And then at the end of the formal part of the talk, which will take about a little less than an hour, we'll have like 15, 20 minutes or something like that for just open-ended questions. And then people have my email address. I absolutely invite you to reach out to me after today's conversation. So with that in mind, I'm going to go into share mode and bring up. Okay, so can everybody see this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so the title of the presentation is The State of Lean Manufacturing and Why That Matters. So I want to give a big picture background of why I started this initiative around lean and introduced Mike to it. I want to talk about some insights from design thinking that have informed what you're about to hear. There's a questionnaire. The questionnaire created some interesting findings and some practical application, and then we'll have open discussion. So jumping right in, all right, we're at a pivotal moment. Since 2003, as far as U.S. manufacturing, we've really been in an invented here, made there, and imported back world. And I know everyone I'm talking to has had personal experience with that. Either, your business has suffered from that, or you've offshored your business as a result of that. And there have really been not only the business impacts to you directly, as you know, but there have really been enormous societal impacts of companies and communities that have really suffered as a result of that invented here, made there, and imported back world that we've been living in. We've had kind of a generation in which manufacturing has been in decline, and we see that with our young people and their lack of interest for careers in manufacturing. But starting in 2019, there's really been a shift, and a shift is underway, but success in that shift is not a sure thing. And that's what's motivating me around the area of lean, and motivating me around other initiatives that we're undertaking in Industry Reimagine 2030. So the tide not only was going out, the tide still is going out. If you look at just some core data, all right, productivity increased in the first 10 years of this millennium, this century, all right, but productivity fell between 2011 and 2021, and then productivity continued to fall in 21 and 22. And U.S. manufacturing competitiveness continues to decline. If we measure competitiveness by the percent of U.S. goods, all right, purchased by U.S. suppliers, if you will. So while we're making more in the United States, relatively speaking, we're importing relatively more than we've been making. So productivity and competitiveness have been in decline. That's why we say the tide is still going out. And so there are some headwinds on manufacturing growth. We're all familiar with these. So I'm just saying these to just get it present in our conversation about why success is not a sure thing. We've had supply chain disruption. We've had lower labor cost countries we continue to compete with, workforce shortages. Many of you are in what I call the hidden supply chain, which is that the average person on the street doesn't realize the depth of the supply chain. The average person on the street is aware of products they buy as a consumer, or they're aware of key manufacturing industries, like electric batteries or semiconductors, and they're not really aware, or airplanes, but they're not really aware of the depth of the supply chain that goes behind producing those goods. We have a headway about broadly benefiting from Industry 4.0, and other countries are ahead of us in benefiting from that. And another headwind is this generational mindset of when you've been in decline for 20 years, decline is all a lot of people know. And so we really need to shift this generational mindset. So from my perspective, there is an imperative to transform productivity and competitiveness at the national level, but the way we transform that is the level of scale of transforming company by company by company level productivity and competitiveness. Because in a recent report that McKinsey did, they said really that productivity will mitigate a lot of the headwinds that are facing the U.S. supply chain. So with that in mind, there are really kind of four key things that we can be doing at a company level to really increase productivity and competitiveness. And again, you're familiar with these: advanced manufacturing, Industry 4.0, the augmented new collar worker, and lean manufacturing. All right, the front runners, all right, are 40% more productive, 30 to 50% more profitable, yet the front runners are only 10 to 15% of companies. So today we're going to be focused on lean manufacturing and how we can scale lean manufacturing to drive productivity and competitiveness at a national level. So lean provides some real tailwinds. Lean provides gains, and we'll talk about that in a minute because we've measured the gains through our lean questionnaire. As you know, lean provides continuous improvement. So not only do we get initial gains, we have companies then that are established to continuously raise the bar on the level of gains they're able to accomplish. Lean creates an army of creative problem solvers. And I thank my good friend Carl Wadenstern, who owns Vibro vibrators in Rhode Island, for that expression, an army of creative problem solvers. Lean reduces the need for CapEx, and it really, when you've got a culture that's lean, what you've got is a culture that's more innovative and able to drive more growth through innovation. So lean provides a lot of tailwinds. So let's take a look at some of the data that we got from the survey, right? So we asked people just overall, tell us what the overall value you got from lean is. All right. And we categorized that into a number of categories. So no gains, marginal gains, visible gains in very, very specific areas, significant operational gains. Then gains we would say are strategic, and then gains that are transformational. And by transformational, they would be gains that enabled you to completely shift your business model, to gains that enable you to enter new markets, gains that enabled you to continue to manufacture in the United States, or gains that enable you to reshore back into the United States. So we asked people to just give us your opinion. What's the overall gains? And you can see from this particular chart, all right, that between strategic and transformational, we're talking about close to 30% of companies evaluated gains as very high. You can see that when it comes to operational gains, about another 30% valued those gains as significant. Moderate also a little bit higher, not unexpected. And then marginal and no gains around 10%. So now driving deeper then into this measurable gains, because it's the first time people have actually created statistics about gains. Up until now, we have people that have anecdotally said, these are my gains. And somebody else would say, these are my gains. But we haven't quantitatively been able to say, overall, these are the measurable gains that people are getting from lean. So this was that overall impression of the value of lean. Then we drove deeper and we asked two questions about improvement. The first question we asked was rate the level of improvement across 10 dimensions. So for quality, was it high? Was it moderate? Was it, very high? And then for people, we said, are you measuring those gains? And if you are, tell us about the measurement of gains. So we asked everyone to evaluate all 10 dimensions. And then we said, if you're measuring dimensions, tell us which dimensions you're measuring and tell us what the gains are in the dimensions that you measured. So we're now seeing a separate set of information distinct from the slide that I just showed you. And let me help you to interpret that. So when we looked at the gains, we then could see that there were really three tiers of gains. We asked people again about very high, high, and moderate. All right. People that said very high, the average gains were 80% across the board of dimensions. For people that said high gains, the average were 40% gains. And for people that said moderate, they averaged 20% gains. And then you could see 26% reported very high, 38% reported high, 36% reported moderate. So here's data that says what's the value of lean. And the worst case is on average, moderate values 20%. And the best case is on very high, average is 80%. So this is data, all right? For those of you who are wanting to convince people and they're saying, hey, where's the data? What's the value of lean? Here's data from a survey of 300 companies, of which 95% were in the United States, saying, here's what lean can do for my company. And lean is done for my company. So lean works. Now, there are two problems. At the company problem, a lot of advocates are troubled that lean's not delivering the full range of benefits that it can. And you talk to executives, you talk to lean champions and lean leaders, and a lot of people are troubled that they're not getting the full range of benefits. And I want to address that today. There's a national problem, which is that lean's holistically been sustained only by about 10 to 15% of manufacturers. So we're leaving enormous amounts of productivity on the table by not more systemically implementing lean as a national imperative. All right. And a lot of people never start the journey, or a fraction of people who start the journey, never complete it. So we formed this initiative called REIMAGINE LEAN. And the initiative REIMAGINE LEAN aims to bring about a 2 to 3 times step increase in adoption, so that we drive a change in the national level of US productivity and competitiveness. And so the challenge question behind that then is, what would it take to have a 2 to 3 times increase in lean? And to answer that question, we formed a collaborative. We sought out thought leaders and key influencers around the United States, and we pulled together a collaborative effort of about 20 thought leaders and influencers in the lean community. We did statistical research through the lean questionnaire, and we did ethnographic research through those influencers and practitioners in their work with clients and prospects. So the call to action of the collaborative was, 1, don't mess with the tools. The tools of lean work. There's nothing wrong with them. Don't mess with the tools. Then the second call to action was to validate or challenge orthodoxies and beliefs. If you're going to really expand lean in a step change way, all right, then there are some orthodoxies or beliefs that are probably working behind the scenes that are limiting you. So let's find out what they are, and let's validate them or challenge them. A result of that would be some new insights. Let's turn those insights into action. Let's experiment. Let's validate. Let's iterate those insights, see how that plays in terms of increasing lean adoption, and then let's broadly disseminate. And today, with Mike's enthusiastic support of our work, all right, we're on, this is part of broadly disseminating what has happened as a result of the Lean Collaborative effort. So I really want to thank all of the people who've really contributed to the Lean Collaborative. If you look at our state of lean manufacturing report, in the appendix of that, we acknowledge all of the different practitioners and thought leaders and influencers who contributed to our work so far. So, first key insight from design thinking. You're probably all familiar with this notion of crossing the chasm. It's also known as the innovation adoption cycle, if you will. And what it says is 10 to 15% of any innovation, people who are the innovators and the early adopters, you don't need to convince them. They'll see the immediate value of it. They'll adopt it. And then there's this chasm that needs to be crossed in order to get to the majority of people. And so what we see is this model really says to us, we've not crossed the chasm. Even though lean's been around for let's see, since the 1990s, so that would make it, 30 some odd years at this point. Even though lean's been around, it really hasn't crossed the chasm. So we've said, gee, that's an interesting insight. What would it take to cross the chasm? And a way to think about that is, if you're crossing the chasm, you need to reach different people. Who are the people we need to reach if we're really going to do this? So so we put some granularity in that. One of the people to reach are leaders, all right, who people are familiar with lean and haven't implemented lean, all right? And probably a number of you on this call are people that would fall into the category of we're familiar with lean and we haven't implemented it. Some of you would fall into the category of we've actually implemented lean, but we've implemented lean in a rather limited way. We've trained some lean experts. We've got some black belts. We do some lean projects. We're using a couple of lean tools. But if we said, do you really have a whole continuous improvement system and culture, all right, throughout manufacturing and the supporting functions? You'd say, no, we're using lean in a limited way, and we're getting some good results from it. Terrific. All right. So for you, that group, we want to talk about now going from a limited use of lean to a much broader application of lean. Then there are some people on the call whose companies may have started lean, got some value from lean, and then oftentimes there's a management change and we've discontinued lean. And so in crossing the chasm, we want to be reaching people who've discontinued lean and now have them back in the lean game. And then there's another category of people that are really in the innovator and early adopter side, and they're people that have really used lean throughout their manufacturing operation. They really have a well-established continuous improvement effort. They really have a lot of engaged employees on that. And I know when you go out and you do the various site tours, as part of your OPEX membership, you see that some companies in manufacturing have really implemented lean throughout the manufacturing operation, right? And then for those, there's the opportunity to go from manufacturing to be enterprise-wide. So those are the folks, those are the segments we're out to reach. All right, and so how do we go? I want you to imagine then that we've reached those segments. I want you to imagine now we've reached, all right, people who are familiar with lean and haven't implemented. We've reached people who've used lean in a limited way, and they're now doing it in a highly extended, broad way. We've reached people whose companies discontinued lean, and they're now back in the lean game, and they're taking on lean with a real vitality and vigor. And we've reached people who've got a lot of results in manufacturing, and they're extending lean to be enterprise-wide. So if you think about, we've reached those people, now how did we reach them? So one of the ways that we in the collaborative have been thinking is kind of standing in the future, having achieved success. Well, what did we get right that actually led to that success? And that's the kind of thinking that you're going to see throughout the rest of this presentation. All right. So what we got right was we got right new ways of speaking to the mainstream executives and workforce that had them see value and friendliness in lean, and they didn't see it before. We've changed implementation so that implementation from the start is achieving bold results within 6 months. So in today's world, all right, it's a very dynamic world. It's not the world of the 1990s. It's the world of the 2020s. And we can't wait 2 years to see results. We need to see results in 6 months. So now we've implemented lean in a way that lean achieves bold results within 6 months and continues to raise the bar thereafterwards. We've implemented change management in a way that reduces friction and resistance during our implementation and expansion of lean. And, we've challenged the orthodoxies and some of the hidden headwinds to adoption. So another key insight is that there really are distinct persona, that if you look at that 10 to 15% on the left side of the adoption curve, they tend to be forward-looking people. We're going to call them Alex. I want to personalize it. And Alex tends to be strategic, big picture, imaginative, innovative. They're looking for growth. When they hire people, they're hiring people not only for their skills, they're hiring people for their potential and talent. All right. And they adopt things based on possibility. So they adopted lean based on the possibility that lean could be for their organization. That's how they see things. There's another persona. So if you think about this, many of you, if not all of you, will have at some point in your careers probably have done a Myers-Briggs, or you'll have done a Berkman, or have done some of these thinking style kind of assessments. And you know, there's no right thinking style. We just all have different thinking styles. So it's another kind of thinking style that is more mainstream, if you will. And the mainstream, we're calling Jamie, and these are intended to be gender neutral pronouns or names. So the mainstream is short-term, action-oriented, very practical, very show-me, very problem-solver-oriented, looks for predictability, sees skills, people in terms of their skills and experience, and they adopt something when it's very relevant and friendly. So, for example, some of you were early adopters of an iPhone because you saw the iPhone and you went, wow, this is something cool. I got to have one. I can see ways to use this. Some of you adopted the iPhone when it became much more relevant and friendly, when you saw a lot of other people using the iPhone and you said, hey, what are you doing with the iPhone? All right. And then you said, oh, I got it. I need to have an iPhone. So I'd like you for right now to kind of in your own mind think, are you an Alex type thinker or are you a Jamie type thinker? Just take a moment and reflect on your own thinking style. So I'd like to have a few people share. So if you are willing to share, if you would raise your hand, use the, raise your hand icon. Brooke will call on you. I'd like to have 2 or 3 people share. What's your experience when people talk to you in their persona and not in yours?
Okay, Morgan.
This is actually Andrew,
Oh, okay.
but just using Morgan's computer.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess for me it's just early on, even I would say I'm forward thinking or forward looking, but you still, when talking with someone in the mainstream mindset, you're still kind of have tunnel vision. So it's that adoption of being able to listen, because we're saying that forward looking is adopting based on possibility. So it's being able to listen to see what's available that they have to say.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. Somebody else?
This is Eileen. I look for commonality. I work with 3 different distinct counties in South Carolina. I have Horry, Georgetown, and Williamsburg. And I think if we keep our mind and ears open, we can find something in common as a starting point.
Thank you.
All right, Caleb.
Yes, I do lean implementation across sewing factories, which is one of the most traditional, set in stone, old style manufacturing across the country, especially here in South Carolina. And I deal with both of these personality types on a regular basis, and it's an important part of assessing when I walk into a plant which mindset the management team has, because both of these come with significant risks to a successful lean implementation. All too often, I see the forward-looking Alex type has either unrealistic expectations as far as the time frame, or is attempting to push through the preferred solution they have already decided on, rather than spending the time in assessment. So a big example of this is automation. People look at the equipment far too often. They say, hey, I want to automate my process to make, collared shirts or something along those lines. And that's the only solution they see. And it can be a real challenge because they're looking so far forward in the future that they want to do the 3D printing and they want to do the environmentally sustainable fibers and they want to do everything else. And they don't understand the nuts and bolts of their market and their industry. On the other hand, more common in the sewing industry is the mainstream, extremely old school traditionalist thought process where they feel they are being forced into change because their business is going under, but they've been running 60, 70 years and they want to make the minimum amount of changes humanly possible to keep the doors open.
Thanks.
Now, both of those have pros and cons, but it is very important to be able to deal with them where they are at and not attempt to just insert my own perspective on their plant. Ultimately, it's their plant, their product, and any lean process they have has to be for them.
Thanks, Caleb. Appreciate that. So, yeah, the point is we need both. We need forward-looking and we need mainstream. And, all right, here's a dynamic. Implicitly, Lean's been speaking to the Alex persona. Lean's been speaking to this big picture, imaginative possibility persona. The language of Lean speaks to Alex. The language of Lean in many cases doesn't initially speak to Jamie. And so it occurs to Jamie like you're asking me to take a leap of faith. And again, this is one of those places where I'm poking the bear, if you will, because some of you will say, no, I really do a great job of talking to the Jamie persona. I'm just pointing that Lean as a methodology, as a system, and you'll see more of what I'm pointing to in a few minutes. So consider that we've biased the way we talk about Lean to be forward-looking, and that bias has resulted in the fact that we haven't crossed the chasm. So reaching different people is essential. Now let's talk about how we do that. So another insight that came out of our research is that there's an arc of how people decide, to implement Lean and continue to do Lean. And the arc consists of three major phases. A familiarized phase, getting familiar with what Lean is and what it can do for me. A consideration phase where I think about it and evaluate it, and then an action phase where I start implementing and putting Lean into business processes and out on the shop floor and with my maintenance people and quality people and throughout the plant. And so when we think about it in that frame, there are implicit questions that people have in the course of familiarizing themselves. So one, I heard about it. That's where familiarization starts. All right, well, what did you hear? Then what exactly is it? So you hear something, it's kind of vague, and then you familiarizing yourself, you go, well, what exactly is Lean? All right, and what can it do for my organization? And what can it do for me? Then when I'm considering it, and so now there's some value there, it's worth considering. Now I'm considering it, I go, how does Lean actually accomplish that? What will it require? What will it require of my organization? And what will it require of me? And what are the risks to my organization and me? Because it's something new, all right? And so anything new has risks associated with it. And then when it comes to act, all right, where do we get started? We started, what do we do next? We did things next, how do we sustain? The insight that comes out of all of this also is that some of these questions are not being well discussed and well answered for people. And if a question isn't well discussed and well answered, people's decision process gets interrupted. And so we found out that there are a lot of places when we're talking about Lean that we're actually interrupting people's understanding and decision process because we're missing one of these questions. For example, what could lean do for my organization? We may answer that at a strategic level. We may not be answering that question really well for the supervisor on the shop floor, the me who's a supervisor. You know that expression, with them, what's in it for me? We find a lot of people have not gotten that question well answered. For leadership, we found out what will it require of me. We really haven't told leaders in many cases what it's going to require of them. We say, you're going to need to support the effort. Well, but what exactly do I need to be doing? And oftentimes we've left that ambiguous. And as a result of that, we've introduced some more headwinds into the adoption of lean. So I'm going to start working through those questions. So one of the things that we wanted to validate or question was we expected some certain relationships around lean. All right, here's, like what people know, and we wanted to either confirm or disconfirm. So one of the things we wanted to know is the relationship between, if you will, the maturity level of adoption of lean and the results and value that lean's delivering. So on the left side is that results that we talked about in that first slide, if you will, from no gains and marginal gains to significant, to strategic and transformational. And we asked people, remember, to evaluate based on that. Independent of that, we asked people about what's the maturity level of their organization. And rather than just say, oh, X% of companies have a certain level of maturity, we wanted to know what's the relationship between the level of maturity and the level of value. So this is what this chart is showing. So what you can see is, okay, that when you only implement lean with specific tools by lean experts, okay, that's where the majority of the marginal and no gain activity happens. That's the lower two. So yellow on the lower two lines, all right, is where lean's been implemented just by lean experts. And you can see that most of the gains, 65% or 70% are marginal, all right, gains. And people who said I got no gains, 80% said I got no gains because of, and I implemented lean with experts. Then we said, great, next level of maturity up. Specific tools broadly trained and used. Okay, so now I have a lot of people in my manufacturing organization. They're using very specific tools and they've been broadly trained. So this might be something like people have been broadly trained in Six Sigma. You know, we've got green belts, brown belts, black belts, purple belts. I lose track of all the different colors. So we've broadly trained people, all right. And we're using the specific tools of, Six Sigma or just in time or something like that, all right. And that's orange. So you can see the relationship there, all right, that the more people have shifted from experts to broadly trained, but using specific tools, that it starts to raise the probability that you're getting higher levels of value. So now I'm moving up more into the visible gains area. The next level of maturity being continuous improvement system and culture in specific operations. So I may have some particular production lines that are using lean as a continuous improvement methodology. I may have all of my production using lean and continuous improvement, but I may not have quality, or I may not have other areas like safety that are using lean in a continuous improvement way. So it's in specific areas of operation, and you can see the more gray, the higher the value. And then green all right, continuous improvement throughout operations, and dark green meaning I'm actually a lean enterprise, I'm enterprise wide. Okay, so the more green gets me to the higher level of operational gains, strategic gains, transformational gains. So when people say, where do you start? You might want to start, you may start at a certain place, but your expectation should be, all right, that it's not until I start to use lean in a continuous improvement way that I'm really going to start to get the true big value from lean. And so this is critical information. When you're aiming to expand lean, this is now data that you can use to speak to people in your organization who say, why are we expanding lean? Because there's a relationship between expanding lean and significant operational gains. Then we asked about how the value increases with years of adoption. No surprise. All right. The more the length of time that you adopt lean, the higher the value that you're going to get. And that less than 1 year was actually an outlier, but we wanted to report it, but it was an outlier. So the longer you stay with lean, the more you'll get more and more value. Lean correlates to leadership. No surprise there. That lean efforts that are led by executives and by executives, plant manager and above, all right, lean efforts that are led by executives have higher results. Lean efforts led by managers have in the middle. Lean that's just led by experts shows up to have the lower level of results. Still good. That may be companies that are getting the 20% moderate gains are getting it that with lean experts, but the companies that are getting the 80% effort gains are getting it because their executives, plant manager and above are really endorsing and supporting and leading the effort. So that's another area of value. We also were very interested in the gains in the first phase of lean, that first 4 to 6 months, because we suspect that how the first 4 to 6 months go really shapes the whole way lean's going to go beyond 4 to 6 months. So what we suspected, all right, we suspected that, all right, and so we asked for some data, and this is where we did sentiment analysis. So people didn't choose answers. They gave us answers in their own language, and we did sentiment analysis on the answers that they gave us. So 48%, we asked people what were the gains, and 48% reported operational gains. They said some of the gains were significant in cycle time, downtime, labor hours, work in process, all right, reliability, quality, you know that list. And some of the gains were just incremental, small batch sizes, lots of small improvement. We eliminated value-added work. And I love this one comment that people said, huge with a few struggles. And I see I should have put that up under significant. Okay. Then we had 35% that said cultural gains, that they got a real indication that just getting employees engaged, all right, made a huge difference even without the tools, that there was a change in awareness on waste and how and seeing waste in the plant and doing something about waste, that the work environment was cleaner, that there was more teamwork and collaboration, and 17% just didn't report gains. Now, you'll notice that that adds to more than 100%. All right. And that's because some people reported operational gains and they reported cultural gains. And we would expect that as well. So that was very, very interesting to just see where people's attention was on the gains that they reported. So then we challenged some orthodoxies and beliefs, all right, that to get significant gains, lean must have upfront executive commitment. And a lot of people have that as a firm belief. And yet the data says that lean led by managers can and does deliver significant value, and that executive commitment can be earned through accomplishment, even if you don't start out having executive commitment. The second was it takes years to get significant gains. All right. And we have example, we asked the practitioners, all right, how many of you can point to significant gains that your clients got in 6 months, 8 months, very short term, and would you report back out to us if you tabulated those gains, what the gains were? All right. And so what we found was that the way we implement lean introduces delays in achieving gains, that we can implement lean in a way that we get gains quick, or we can implement lean in a way that introduces delays in achieving gains. So here's an example of what one of the collaborators reported, and many of our collaborators reported similar things. So they came up with a box score of the key measures that were relevant to the plant in terms of lead time, productivity, margin, inventory turns, delivery, and sales. Where was the status of the plant before they started lean? What was the target they set? What did they achieve after 6 months? And what did they achieve much longer term? And so in showing this, we're appealing to both personas, because the Alex persona is very long-term oriented, and the Jamie persona is very shorter term oriented. And so in this particular diagram, all right, chart, we're showing Jamie and Alex in the language they understand, what the gains are, what lean can do for the organization. All right. So again, keeping our eye on the ball, all right, we're really reaching different people is essential. And we were particularly interested in that first phase of reaching people, because again, that the first phase sets the tone for how valuable lean is to the organization. And so we came up with some lessons on how to get started. You can see what those lessons are about. Solve specific problems, inch wide, mile deep, meaning, highly focused. Use terms that work for the culture. So in some cultures, some of the Japanese oriented language actually was a hindrance, and people found that they needed to reinvent language and use simple terms, all right, that really work for the culture, to openly discuss what the benefits are, not only for the organization, but what would the benefits be for you on the shop floor? What would the benefits be for you, the supervisor? What would the benefits be for you, the manager in the plant? So key to change management is openly discussing the benefits in very, very personal, individualized terms, jumping on problems, all right, and letting employees learn and develop what they need instead of having it being fed by experts. And then we learned what not to do. You can see, don't pick easy targets, don't go after too many objectives or train too many people at the outset, avoid this kind of lean speak, So there were lessons for what to do, lessons for what not to do. And then we took that and we structured that into a template and said, okay, great. Now let's provide some real guidelines for people in how to do it. And these guidelines really came from those examples of where our members of our collaborative, in conjunction with their clients, have really achieved big results in a short period of time. And so that startup phase looks like spending 4 to 6 weeks doing preparation and 3 to 4 months doing deployment, assessing the situation, setting your goals, all right, discussing what will be required of executives and plant managers and their people, and holding general orientation sessions. And then, if you think about the target deployment, if you were to imagine what would it have to look like deploying lean in order to get results in a short period of time, you'd say, great, we want to identify the first results. We want to identify the key bottlenecks to producing those results. And those are the bottlenecks that we're going to focus on, the process bottlenecks. We want to pick particular people to participate and train. We don't need to train everybody. We want to pick the people that are going to directly contribute to the results. We want to select the lean practices, tools, and methods that are going to be specific to delivering those results. We don't need to train people on the 20 sets of different practices in lean. All right. And then when it came to executing, we want to execute with a rhythm of making progress. So this idea of agility, of short sprints aimed at a particular bottleneck, address that, have a sprint for the next bottleneck, have a sprint for the next one, surface concerns and rapidly address them so that we can remove that bottleneck and move on, publicize the progress. And again, do this in an iterative way and ask leadership for the specific behaviors and practices that are going to support this effort. So that's the startup phase. And then lean evolves over time. So there are like 20 major tools and methods in the lean vocabulary. People don't start with all of them. They pick the few that they're going to start with. And over time, they evolve into other methods, all right, once the initial set of methods became well established. All right, so we challenged the orthodoxies. The other last insight was that lean messaging and education implicitly focuses on the analytics side of improvement. All right, yet culture is where action happens. So lean is both a skill set and new habits, and change management is really, really critical. So, and that's what the survey, again, sentiment analysis said, the biggest roadblocks were lack of understanding. So people that had implemented lean still had lingering questions as to what lean is, why we're doing it, what the benefits are. So that question was never thoroughly discussed and answered. Lack of consistent leadership and support. Well, what exactly do you want your leaders to be doing? People oftentimes were very vague about that. And we need to be very specific and say to leaders and management, these are the few things we're asking of you, etc. So these are, for the most part, this is change management. And lean, one of the things that we challenged and discovered about lean is that lean really doesn't incorporate change management into how we implement lean. And that's something that we're working with on in the collaborative. So, what would have the startup phase be highly relevant and friendly? That's what would do it. Is we pick a few bold targets. We train people in just the necessary tools, and we involve just the necessary people. So we're not pulling everybody in. We're working in this kind of short sprint cycle, removing specific bottlenecks, making progress, moving on to the next set of process bottlenecks, and making progress. That's what have a startup be highly relevant and friendly. All right. So, I want to now interact a little more. I want you to think about this question. What exactly is lean? And write it down. If somebody says to you, what exactly is lean? What's the one or two questions you're going to ask? I'm sorry, what's the one or two statements you're going to make that answer the question, what exactly is lean? We asked that of Google search, Wikipedia, and Chat GPT. And we said, what's lean? And this is what Google and Wikipedia and Chat GPT said. And you can see that the language here, the language naturally appeals to that Alex persona. So we wanted to come up with a working definition of lean, that works for the Jamie persona. And that working definition we came up with is that lean is a way of continuously improving results, eliminating bottlenecks and waste through engaged employees. And that lean provides a common language and a set of proven methods. And that's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And it emphasizes the fact that the gains really are coming from engaged employees. And that's something that's not been emphasized sufficiently, all right, in the way we talk about lean, in the way, it's portrayed, and think yet when everyone who is enamored, everyone who goes to a lean conference, the thing that they walk away with when they're really impressed with a company is they really walk away being impressed by how engaged the employees are. So we need to bring a new level of emphasis to engaged employees. Common language, when people say waste, lean brings a language to what waste is. Now, all of a sudden, people can walk around the plant and go, oh, waste is more than just scrap on the floor. I can see waste in terms of we made too much. I can see waste in terms of wait time. I can see waste in terms of how much time we have to walk around the plant to get something done, or how much motion happens with moving of material in order to process it. Now I have a common language to talk about waste. I have some common tools like value stream mapping, all right, where I can map the waste of time or waste of anything over the entire production line. And here's an example of what that results in, all right, here's what the green represents useful value-added work being done, and the red represents non-value-added delays and non-value-added activity. And what you can see is if you start reducing the red, you wind up reducing cycle time, which you save that much time in cycle time. So when people talk about how did I gain all this reduction in cycle time, how did I improve my customer delivery reliability and shorten that order to ship cycle time, this is exactly how they did it. They did it by eliminating non-value-added time in the workflow. So what can lean do for me? We're answering that question at the organization level, for the production people, for the plant people, for the corporate management, all right? And we're speaking in their language. We're answering it in what's in it for me language. And we're telling people what skills and practices we want from them. So for plant management, communicate and make visible the site goals and the metrics. Go and see, go talk to people out on the shop floor on a frequent basis. Ask people things like, what are the team's improvement goals? What are the bottlenecks? What support does the team need in order to reduce those and eliminate those bottlenecks? Again, we're answering those questions. And the mainstream needs specifics. So there are risks. Let's cover the risks and talk about them. So it's not that risks that have an answer. It's the act of discussing the risk diffuses it. If I can't talk about the risk gets magnitude in my own mind. If I can talk about the risk, one, I find out that I'm not the only one who's thinking that that's risky, but also it gets less risky, and we start to see that there are things we can do to mitigate the risk. So we continue to surface and discuss it. And then for the next phase, all right, the main thing is raise the bar. What's the next target we're going to go for? If you're not raising the bar, then you're going to be losing competitive advantage. So why do lean to the next phase? Because we want to raise the bar. We want to sustain and advance our competitive advantage. And why sustain lean after we achieve all our great goals is because factories are gold mines. A 1% improvement goes straight to the bottom line. And so that's where we want to go back and reassess our factory, from the preparation work, take a look at now, see what now are the big things to aim for in competitive advantage. We now want to be taking a look at extending lean beyond manufacturing and becoming a lean enterprise. So summing up things, okay, increasing productivity is the key to revitalizing manufacturing. The aim is a 2 to 3 times broader adoption by reaching a new population. How? Speak to the different persona, make lean relevant and friendly, discuss often hidden questions, structure lean for results, employee engagement, structure that it's learned by doing, not learned by classroom, and keep raising your bar on productivity and competitiveness. So then what's next? All right, step up your company's game and set some bold targets. Experiment with these actionable insights. Use the resources of OpExchange and encourage and support lean in your suppliers. So have your suppliers becoming more and more lean. And that's a way that you can leverage lean. The multiplier effect of your company at a national level is supporting lean in your suppliers. And then what's happening in our lean effort is expanding these insights to the broad community, getting lean into lean education programs, getting these insights, expanding the data we have about lean, gaining sponsorship of national, regional, like OpExchange, all right, and industry groups, bringing more wow. And also we're taking a look at digitizing lean with Industry 4.0 and that kind of melding of the two. So, with that, I want to open for discussion. All right. And, Mike, Brooke, if you moderate people who want to jump in and discuss any of the material that we've just covered.
One of the things that really resonates from what we see in the OpExchange in South Carolina is, and I think you hit on it with the engaged employees and the leadership and the culture. Because I look in our OpExchange and the people on this call right now, I have several companies that have had big gains. They've made big strides, right? Now look at what are those common denominators that they have, right? And they had leadership. The leadership, the people that cared about their people. They had a good culture. The people that wanted the company to do well because they understood what they were doing. That leadership, they knew that leadership cared about them. They may not understand lean, but they understood that their company, what their company was doing, their company cared about them, and that it educated them. So that was one of the things I really see. I mean, I'm looking through the companies that are here. I know probably 6 or 7 companies that are on this call that have made big gains, right? And it was through that culture and that leadership.
So we want to open for questions, right, Mike? So, if people would raise their hands and then Brooke will call on them and we'll take questions for about 15 minutes and then Mike will do his wrap up.
Don't be shy,
Hey,
folks.
Debbie.
Yeah, actually, it's Ed. Debbie's in the room, but Ed Bearden. Doug, Like I saw, bring more wow. Does wow stand for something? Because when I was
Yeah.
in X, wow was the worst of worst. So
No, wait, here's what WOW's not, I count on you to ask that question, so I'm glad somebody did, okay? What it is lean's lost its wow, if you will. It's lost the wow factor, all right? So we want to bring back a wow factor. We're thinking about including, is lean manufacturing, or even the term lean now, is it a misleading term? Because so many people associate lean, knee-jerk reaction. Lean means just in time, and lean means inventory, lean means reducing workforce. So we're thinking about, do we need to reinvent a different context for what lean manufacturing is? So that's what it means, bring the wow. We don't know. We have anybody who has some ideas in that regard, I would really welcome you to drop me a note, send me an email. Somebody else, I see there are a couple of other hands raised, Brooke.
I only see the one. Anybody else? Here we go. Al.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment when we're talking about the wow factor of lean, and I can say even with the op exchange, we started with a lean alliance and it became op exchange because I think just generally people were not as enamored, like you said, it lost its wow, and people were, well, we don't need that stuff. That stuff doesn't work anymore, and so we even changed sort of the focus of these groups. And I'm glad to see it coming back and having the conversation and focus around lean, because a lot of it is, fundamental manufacturing practices, things that are, been proven many places, many times. And so I think it's a proven concept and methodology about reducing waste and continuous improvement. And I think just now getting like the people on this call and others sort of re-engaged and focused on going back to some of those fundamental types of things. It was almost, almost sold, if you will, like a sort of flavor of the month. And I think that's why it sort of ran its course in a lot of people's minds. It's a program, it's something you do. And so people did it, tried it, okay, we're done with that, let's do something different. But I think if you take the approach of, again, this is just fundamental, struggle to say common sense, but fundamental common sense manufacturing practices that focus on reducing waste, getting the most out of your people and processes. And I think it's good that now we're trying to re-energize and refocus. So thank you for that. And Mike, thank you, obviously, and SCMEP and the op exchange.
Thank you.
It looks like we have, now help me out here. Vladimir?
Vladimir.
Yes, it's Vladimir.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
yes, Vladimir. Hey, Mike, it's nice to see you. Thank you so much. It's a great class. I think I'm being a lean practitioner from, I would say, like more than 7 years. It is a great tool, and it brings a lot of advantages and benefits in terms of savings. And but the only problem that I would like to share with all of you as well is something about it that the dog mentioned about the communication. Got to be through the whole corporation or the whole organization, but it got to start from the top. He is the main one who needs to understand well this methodology in order to support it. Because unfortunately, in couple opportunities, I use it just under the just my department in production. And even though it was up and down, I was struggling with the other departments, even with the other things, because the idea was not completely across. It should be an idea that needs to start from the top, and it should be spread to the whole organization in order to everybody be in the same page. And communication is key in order to keep informing about the advances, about the things, even about the ideas that the people must have, especially the frontline operators who face with different challenges in a daily basis, and they know exactly what's going on there. So it's important to have that communication really straightforward and make sure everybody's in the same page. And thank you so much again. And this is really great and nice, and it's definitely help us to improve in this situation. Thank you.
You're very well. Again, I want to emphasize what the data says, okay? The data says that you can start with the management level, all right? And you can in communicating with executives, you can have executives earn commitment. You don't necessarily have to start with executive commitment. So that's one of those orthodoxies and beliefs that we're really setting out to challenge. Okay, so so thank you for bringing that up, Vladimir. Appreciate you mentioning that. Somebody else?
Okay, looks like Caleb was next.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize one of the things that I see where lean often fails is in the transition between the lean project, so the implementation of getting it beginning, to that establishment of the lean culture. So if you're implementing a lean process in your own plant, understand that first 2 weeks to 2 months after you make a lean change is when it is at its most vulnerable. And I see this fail many, many times as the project mindset transfers into the process mindset. And just it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to get it through there, because it's far too easy to declare victory too early. And then you walk back in your plant 3 months later and it's all gone. No one can explain what happened to it.
Yeah, and the point that I would make in support of what you just said is it really points to that there are misunderstandings about lean, or said another way, there are some understandings that people have about lean that should be dispelled during the preparation phase. So we should be addressing these points in that 4 to 6 weeks right up front preparation, that even though we're only going after a specific high value target with specific tools and specific people, it's really our internal proof point for then going after more high value targets and involving more people along the way to actually having this be that the way we operate around here is we have an army of creative problem solvers. So I think the key to that is how that is clarified right up front during that preparation stage. But thank you very much for raising the point, because you're absolutely right. That is a very often a headwind in the implementation of lean.
All right, looks like Derek was next.
Hi, yes. My name is Derek Mullen. I work with Allied Logistics, and we've been fortunate enough to spearhead some warehouse transformation projects for our client companies. And on the continuation to the previous question, what are the best ways you've seen to build onus within the shop floor supervision to continue these processes, right? To make sure they're not falling to the wayside, because while you can have director level support to implement it, they are very busy people. We don't want those folks out there auditing and stuff. So maybe, once you establish the why with that supervision, why we're doing it and why and how it is going to make their lives easier in the long term, what are the best ways to establish that onus with them and make sure that's the process that they're checking in on and making sure it's working on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So, Derek, one of the things is that supervisors tend to be a focal point for pain. The pain of the plant is oftentimes felt most directly by the supervisor, right? So if in going after things, turn the pain into a bottleneck and use lean to go after the bottleneck. All right. So that's the way to win the hearts and minds of supervisors, is take away their pain.
Yeah, definitely.
And lean does that, you know, so it's not over promising. I mean, it's over promising to think it's a magic bullet. It's not,
Right.
but it's not over promising to say, what's the biggest pain point you're dealing with? All right, let's use lean what's the process bottleneck that's causing that pain? Let's use lean to go after that bottleneck.
Yep.
Does that
All
answer
right.
your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Great question.
Perfect. Okay, and it looks like Eric is up next, and then we've got a couple comments in the chat as well.
Yes, Eric Andrews. I work for Morgan Advanced Materials, and it was refreshing to hear that you can start from the management level, because people often think or view it as executive, and that's exactly where I am now. I'm starting at a manager's level with myself and my supervisors, and we are starting to see some gains because we're actually using lean and the lean tools on the shop floor with the cell meetings, the tier 1s and the tier 2s, to identify those bottlenecks you're talking about, the things that we need moved. And when the supervisors start to see that the lean tools are helping them identify those things, and then we get the executives and the support managers to buy in and start to moving those obstacles for them, they buy in more, and now they're more engaged. They're making sure that when we have these sale meetings, they get their operators involved. They put all the obstacles that they have on the shop floor at those meetings so they can be identified. And now it actually is turning to the executives and the support managers. They're starting to implement a lot of these lean initiatives in their areas. So we're starting to see some gains in that way. So that was refreshing to hear that that mindset is kind of changing, and that the supervisors are no longer the ones that are taking the blunt of all the pain.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of people who actually turn down becoming a supervisor, even if they can make more money, because they go, you know, the supervisors are the ones who go home at night and, you know, have all the anxiety and all the stress and all the burnout. I'd much rather just have my job, get my job done, and be able to leave work and leave the problem. So we want to have the supervisor now be somebody who actually becomes an enabler of problem solving, you know, and then the supervisor job becomes creative and fun instead of burdensome and burnout.
We got 5 more minutes.
Okay, it looks like we just have Sean, and then, like I said, a couple comments in the chat.
Okay.
Hey, Doug, can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Doug, my name's Sean Summey from Dish Network. I like the point on one of your last slides about continually raising the bar. Was that in regards to where you might be on your lean journey, or metrics?
Both. Absolutely. And they're interrelated. So the reason, you know, the reason you want to raise the bar on your lean journey is in large part because we want to raise the bar on our results.
Okay, so two-parter then. Could you share an example of a successful lean implementation and highlight their raise the bar standard work process?
Wow, I'd be happy to. Why don't you you know, I can't do it in the remaining time. So why don't you send me an email, all right? And then I'd be happy to provide you with whatever examples you want.
Thanks, sir. And thanks for your time today.
You're very welcome.
Okay, and Vanille.
Hello. Okay, my question is, so I'm trained in Six Sigma. You know, I'm more on that side of the field. And of course, a lot of things, a lot of the tools are the same, a lot of things are similar, but it's not at the end of the day. It's a little bit different. So is there a specific focal point or some direction that I should start learning to go more into lean and understand lean more than the Six Sigma session of it?
Yeah, if you start to, I mean, again, Mike can refer you to resources at the MEP or others who can help provide you with some things in South Carolina. But the biggest thing to wrap your head around is where Six Sigma tends to be very project oriented and very oriented around quality. Lean is very continuous improvement oriented, and nothing's off limits. So any area of the plant, if you think can be improved through continuous improvement and employee engagement, all right? And so it's taking Lean Six Sigma from that kind of project focus into being more employee engagement and continuous improvement oriented.
Okay. Okay.
Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense as a shift in
Somewhat, because
mindset?
I would say somewhat, because even with projects or anything that you're doing with Six Sigma, a main focus is to get the employees engaged into the project because they're typically the experts in an area or in a task. So, and you can use Six Sigma toward, in my experience, you can use it towards anywhere in the plan as well to kind of create a small project and
Yeah,
do some type of improvement. So
yeah.
it's still very similar to me.
And it's really a shift in context. The tools are very relevant. It's
Yeah.
the shift in context to say exactly what you just said. So you're on the way you're thinking about it. Yes, you just keep thinking that way.
Okay, gotcha.
We're gonna
Thank
need
you.
to wrap it up. I'm sorry. I know there's still got more questions and this is great, but you ready for me to take back over, Doug?
Go for it's
We only got 2 more minutes.
it's balls hand it off to you, Mike.
All right. So the great session. The again, the amount of interest that we got here, right, just shows you the need for this. So Doug, I want to thank you. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for leading this discussion. Thank you for this focus and the report. Again, this report is something that's going to be helpful to help us talk with others in our organization and our suppliers. Just a few things to wrap up with. So step up your game, set those bold targets. The unprecedented collaboration. So this is where, what we're doing. Now, one of the things you said, how do you get more educated in lean? Attend plant visits. Now, go to these plant visits and see how some of these other companies are doing this. We just had a plant visit at 6-Axis in Andrews. It was great. They did this the 2-year transformation where they have this culture that they're building, this culture, and they're sustaining it. That was a great thing to see how they were doing it. Go to the portal and look in the portal. All of our past plant visits are on the portal. So if you've missed one, go look at that. Look at what they've done there. Reach out to your network. So again, I mentioned I can name 7 companies in this call that have had these transformational large impacts. How do they do it? Reach out to them. They're on the network. We have all the companies on the portal. You can reach out to them and say, hey, can we come do a deeper dive with you? And then for those of you that are further along on your journey, share your best practice. This is a call, right? This is a call for this unprecedented collaboration. We want to expand and propagate this lean emphasis beyond just your organization, the whole United States, South Carolina, United States. Propagate this, share it. Your suppliers, push your suppliers. They should be lean as well, right? It only helps you, help propagate it with them. Then your resources. So you have with the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the SMEP, you have regional vice presidents that are assigned to you. Every one of you in every county, you have an SMEP RVP that is yours.
Mike, I think there it goes. Okay.
What's that?
We lost
the sound went out for just a second.
Am I there?
Yep.
Okay. So your RVPs, utilize them. They're a resource. The Department of Commerce, there's also an industry manager there. And there's frequently budget. There are funds available as well frequently. So reach out to your RVPs. One resource I was going to tell you about is this competitiveness review. This is a free resource from the SCMP. They come in and they do it's a half day to a day review of your operations, and they come back and give you a comprehensive report. And maybe some things you already knew, but there probably be some things you don't know. And they're going to come back with recommendations on things to do to help up your game. So it's there, it's free, utilize it. And then Doug has promised that if we get 50% of the people on this call to answer that questionnaire, to be part of that data, that'll help as well. And then we will get our own South Carolina only report. Right, Doug?
Right.
So I'm gonna send out an email, the event recap of this, and in there you'll have another opportunity if you haven't completed the questionnaire to please do that.
And the questionnaire only takes 9 minutes.
It's very quick. Yeah. So there's your RVPs, seven of these folks that are there to help you. So make sure you get to know them. There's a link. You can find them at scmp.org. Again, I'll include that in the event recap so you can see that. Make sure you utilize this resource, and feel free to reach out to Doug as well. And then very quickly, the upcoming events. I'm not going to go into detail on all these. It's out there on opichange.com. We do have a few more spots at TNS Brass and Bronze Work on June 20th. I think 4 more spots in that. The Michelin Lunch and Learn, it opened up today. It's sold out. We're going to make another one available on the 19th. So if you want to attend that, there's another one on the 19th. We'll get that out there here probably within the next day. And then BMW, that's going to be a sellout tour. So again, no charge for it, but this is where the enrollment opens on July 11th. So if you want to attend that one, be at your computer July 11th at 8 a.m. because that one's, I got 40 spots and we're allowed 2 per company, so it'll go very quickly. A lot of good events. Attend those events. That's probably the best thing you can do in the Op Exchange, is to see how other people are doing it and to network. Any questions for me before we end it? Great session today. Thank you again, Doug. Thank you all for attending this and participating.